Welcome to a Fox 26 News special celebrating Black history. For the next half hour, we invite you to learn more about Houston's rich Black history.
We'll introduce you to some of the people whose work would make our ancestors proud. And you'll also hear from the next generation about what Black History Month means for them.
But first, Lena, tonight we are going to talk about Olive Wood Cemetery, a place that you might have driven right past, not realizing just how close you were to some incredible Houston history.
This is my great-grandmother's family plot here, Emma Brown.
Charles Cook never expected while clearing weeds around this old Houston cemetery 30 years ago, he'd find his great-grandparents were buried here.
So it took on even added dimension.
And he'd discover the incredible history behind Olive Wood Cemetery, which sits just off White Oak Bayou near downtown. It's the resting place for hundreds of freed slaves, some of Houston's earliest Black residents.
This was a cemetery that was established by African-American men back in 1875 for just, $10 a share. And it's 7.5 acres.
Among the estimated 4,000 people buried here are pioneers, like David Elias Dibble, the first ordained Methodist minister in Texas, Houston's first Black alderman, Richard Brock, and Lucy Farrow, known as the Mother of Pentecost. The last known burials here were in the 1960s.
You're 6 feet away from history. It's not just the breadth of time.
Jasmine Lee is an anthropology student at University of Houston and was so intrigued by Olive Wood's story, she started doing her own research and now gives tours to visitors.
This is more than just a book or a building. This is the physical remains of the people that made so much history. And losing that is part of losing a connection.
But the 6+ acres you see today is much improved. For years, the cemetery was neglected.
It had been overgrown for several decades. So that lets you know how bad it was. Nothing was visible. There was no fence around it.
It's why Cook co-founded Descendants of Olive Wood in 2008. The nonprofit organizes regular cleanups and put up a fence. Still, there are challenges. Last summer, the group got a $50,000 grant to help with flooding and erosion issues.
We're actually now re-gridding the cemetery, so we will know where every monument is, the names on the monuments. So we're applying now for a grant to help restore some of the monuments.
Charles Cook says it's the least he can do to honor his ancestors by keeping the headstones clear and their stories alive. Well, Black History Month has been celebrated every February for more than 4 decades now. But did you know it started as Negro History Week, the brainchild of scholar and the son of former enslaved people Carter G. Woodson nearly 100 years ago, all the way back in 1926. This was as a way to recognize and celebrate Black history, Black culture, and the historic but often overlooked contributions of Black people. Well, by the late 1960s, the focus on Black history evolved from just a single week into an entire month. And in 1976, not long after the Civil Rights Movement, it was officially recognized by President Gerald Ford. So you might be asking, why in February? Well, both Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass were born in February. Both of them obviously extremely influential in the ending of the forced enslavement of Blacks here in America.
Now, you can't talk about Black history without celebrating the work of the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And some of the talented Houston ISD students honored him at an oratory competition earlier this year.
Brotherhood, peace, justice. If we work together with these three in mind, we can achieve Dr. King's vision. Thank you. We're not where we ought to be, but thank God we are not where we used to be. I am Dr. King's dream. You are Dr. King's dream. This is what makes our country so great. We need to recognize that our differences are actually our strengths. Our unique perspectives make our society stronger.
For me, being Black in America is representing our freedom that we fought so hard for.
My mom, she just listens to music and we watch like Black history movies.
School shootings, yeah.
On a chilly Wednesday afternoon, I sat down with 5 students at HISD's Crispus Attucks Middle School, located deep in the heart of Sunnyside, one of Houston's predominantly Black neighborhoods.
I just want to thank like all the people that's done that stuff for us, like Rosa Parks and Ruby Bridges and Harriet Tubman.
What started as a friendly, light conversation about celebrating Black history and excellence quickly took a sharp, morbid turn when the topic of George Floyd and police brutality was breached.
For me, the George Floyd incident really took like a toll on me because I was like, wow, I can't believe like they would really do that to someone. What my mom told me, like if we ever get pulled over, to put my hands where the cops can see them and make sure I follow their rules and do what the cops say to do and try to be as polite and as proper as possible. Just because the color of your skin, you know, just being black, that like they can take anything you do in a wrong way. So I think that's very sad and upsetting to know.
Although these kids are only 12, 13, 14 years old, their parents have made them acutely aware of how they need to behave in order to stay safe.
I have to say and think about what I say, because sometimes when I approach somebody, like they'll get the wrong idea, and if I be like in front of a cop, they'll probably do what they did to George Floyd to me.
Do you really think that? Do you think that if you behave a certain way, act a certain way, that you run the risk of getting treated like that?
Yes.
And why do you think that?
Because the way I see it, like what she said about George Floyd, saying that he couldn't breathe, the man still didn't do it, didn't get off. He kept putting his knee on his neck.
I always try to think about like what I would be able to do in that situation if I like got pulled over or like an aggressive cop tried to approach me. I think I just try to obey as best as possible until I can get out of the situation.
Walk how you usually walk.
Their answers were not only eye-opening, but concerning. Growing up in Sunnyside, one of the most crime-stricken neighborhoods in the Bayou City, walking side by side with violent criminals and hearing gunshots at night has become all too part of a normal routine.
I remember one time me and my mom were watching a movie on the couch, and we just heard bang, bang.
Some of us grew up here. They probably call it like the hood, the ghettos, things like that. We used to type of stuff like this, so we learn how to just manage with it.
My mom just tells me whenever you hear like a little bang or whatever, just to get on the floor, because like Madison said, it could go through a window or through a door, and that does happen in my neighborhood sometimes. Mostly all the time at night, people shoot and stuff.
You're 12 years old and you're learning how to duck from a bullet that might come
and
through
like
the
she
house.
was
That
saying,
is
you know,
insane.
You could just be riding the bus and someone can pull up with a gun and just shoot the bus. That's how crazy it is. It's just, they have zero chill, no remorse, no mercy for anyone. You can't be a kid because there's so much stuff going on in today's world that you have to know.
While their fears may be warranted, their dreams of a brighter, better future are pure and well-intentioned.
For the future, I hope that everyone does learn how to not judge each other off the color of our skin.
What I hope for in the future is for us to like end racism, and we can all be like a one community to get along with each other, and we wouldn't have to be worried about walking outside alone or riding a bus or just being scared to be by ourselves.
Natalie He.
Again, that was Natalie He reporting from the mouths of babes. You know, sharing stories of Black history makers with the next generation, it's something that should and needs to happen year-round, not just during the month of February. So to help with that, a publishing company named Melanin Origins has created a series of books that take historical figures and transforms them into children. And Houston ISD is even considering adding that unique literature to their curriculum.
We write children's books about African-American pioneers. So Booker T. Washington, Ida B. Wells, Madam C.J. Walker. We take our leaders, we transform them into children so they can be relatable to children, to the child audience, so they can tell their stories about triumph, great achievement, and success, and encourage kids that they can do those very same things. Instilling in children that they can achieve their goals, their dreams, despite any challenges that they may face, that's paramount. And that's very important when it comes to our children for Black History Month.
The founder of Melanin Origins says they believe instilling cultural confidence takes time, and the sooner that you start, the better. And maybe that early exposure will lead to a desire of Black excellence in higher education.
Well, coming up after the break, we visit both of the historically Black colleges here in the Houston area, as enrollment at both institutions has hit an all-time high. Historically Black colleges and universities have been around since the mid-1830s, and there are more than 100 HBCUs all across the country. And our area is fortunate enough to have two of them. Fox 26 anchor Isaiah Carey is here to show us how these institutions are so special and so sought after.
Well, Jonathan, there has been a series of events which brought about the renaissance of historically black colleges and universities in recent years, from the push for racial justice to NFL legend and now Jackson State coach Deion Sanders. He's been able to snag some of the country's #1 college recruits for his HBCU school, and now people are taking notice of all the little schools that could. What would life be like without the ocean of soul from the campus of Texas Southern University? What would happen if the marching storm didn't rock the crowd at Prairie View A&M University? While bands and sports are the core of historically black colleges and universities around the country, that's not all it's about.
HBCUs are outstanding institutions, and they are known for providing an opportunity for students to study with faculty members who care about them, who go above and beyond to make sure they're successful.
Dr. Alicia Crump Young is a current president at TSU. She says there has been a renewed interest in HBCUs over recent years.
We have seen an increase in giving from the private sector. We've also seen an increase in corporate America and other organizations forming partnerships with HBCUs, and I'm very excited about that.
The renewed interest in HBCUs came with the pandemic, racial reckoning after the death of George Floyd, and a reminder that the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, attended an HBCU by the name of Howard University.
Everyone from Dr. Martin Luther King down to Madam Vice President are products of HBCUs.
There are 100 HBCUs in the United States. The schools began at a time when blacks either found it difficult or were rejected from many of the mainstream institutions of higher learning around the country. Cheney University in Pennsylvania was the first back in 1837.
Texas Southern, it just felt like home to me. The family environment, the feel, the cultural experiences that I would gain.
For decades, HBCUs were considered second-class schools, but that's long been a thing of the past. More and more black students, including Hispanics and even whites, are now embracing the schools. Enrollment sits at just under 300,000 students nationwide, students who are beaming with pride at Texas Southern University.
We have more applications to attend our institution than we've ever had before.
HBCUs cultivate an environment for students to feel confident as we develop professionally and personally.
One need only travel along Highway 290 to see how matriculating at HBCUs like Prairie View is not just an attendance record, but a way of life.
You can't get this experience anywhere else or at any other institution. So I definitely wanted to, stay with my culture and just get the full experience of being around other black students and just gaining connections with each other.
Once I got to understand the benefit of attending an HBCU, like actually getting to understand and know your culture and the knowledge that really happened about African American history or black history.
The resurgence in popularity at HBCUs appear unstoppable, even though some have tried and are trying as we speak.
Any bomb threat that comes in, I'm getting the first call.
Just this week, several historically black colleges and universities around the country have been the targets of bomb threats. It's the second round of threats in a month's time.
One thing I will say that any call that's or any threat toward one HBCU is a threat to all HBCUs, and so we don't take anything lightly.
In the meantime, HBCUs are changing the way Americans think about education. It's a reminder smaller schools with less funding have been able to survive and produce quality students like Martin Luther King and even the VP, Kamala Harris. Now, if you're wondering if the HBCU system has its own so-called Ivy League schools, the answer is yes. They're called the Black Ivy League. Howard University, Hampton, Morehouse, Fisk, and Tuskegee, just to name a few. In the studio, Isaiah Carey, Fox 26 News.
Black History Month isn't only about highlighting the pioneers before us, but also the people making a difference right now, inspiring our future generations. And Fox 26 anchor Jose Grignon gives us a look at some of the people here locally who are doing exactly that.
Later this year, Reginald DeRoche will be installed as president of Rice University. He's the first black, and coming from Haiti, he becomes the first immigrant to hold that prestigious position.
I was honored. It's a humbling appointment. I've worked my entire career, and to be told I'd be the president of this great university was just an incredible moment for me and for my family.
In 2017, DeRoche was named Dean of the School of Engineering at Rice. He was later named Provost in 2020. Reginald DeRoche now becomes Rice University's 8th president. Yet another history maker we're watching, local musical artist Tobe Nwigwe, a Nigerian-American who hails from A-Leaf. His unique style of rap music and original inspirational lyrics with poetic messages started online and have now garnered him nationwide attention. He performed several songs live on BET's Hip Hop Awards. He is also featured on Michelle Obama's Exercise blog. Tobe has also been featured on the cover of Ebony Magazine Online, and he was the first rapper to perform at Houston's 713 Music Hall.
We love you. We appreciate every single person in the city. Southwest forever, Houston till the day I die.
Our next history maker is sports icon Johnny B. Dusty Baker, a former Major League outfielder for 19 years before retiring. And that was not the end, but rather the beginning of a second career as a team manager. In 1993, he took over the helm of the Giants, then moved to the Cubs, the Reds, and the Nationals before joining the Houston Astros in 2020. Under his leadership, the Astros won 95 games and made a trip to the World Series. He was also named Manager of the Year by Baseball America.
Still got some unfinished business, and I love these guys over here. I love the town of Houston.
A humble manager that many local fans would like to see take the Astros to another World Series as a living history maker. Jose Grignon, Fox 26 News.
Let's take a look at some other history makers. In 1968, Shirley Chisholm was the first woman of color to be elected to the U.S. Congress, representing New York's 12th Congressional District.
We have 20-some black women in Congress now. Never would have happened had it not been for Shirley Chisholm's courage. Never would have Kamala been the white vice president in the White House now.
In 1972, Chisholm became the first woman of any race to run for a major party presidential nomination. And when Kamala Harris ran for Congress herself, she used Chisholm's campaign slogan of "For the People." And actor Sidney Poitier, a trailblazer in Hollywood who passed away earlier this year, but he's remembered by his legacy of portraying black men with dignity on screen in groundbreaking roles that defied racial stereotypes. In 1964, he became the first black actor to win an Academy Award for Best Lead Actor.
It is a long journey to this moment. I am naturally indebted to countless numbers of people.
Actor Denzel Washington and producer and director Tyler Perry both say that Poitier was their biggest inspiration.
Well, Lena, some other names that you may be less familiar with. Garrett Morgan, in 1923, with no more than an elementary school education, he invented something that we use every day. We're talking about the 3-light traffic signal. He also invented hair straightening products, a revamped sewing machine, and a safety hood to keep firefighters from inhaling smoke. That invention was later used to create gas masks that were used in World War II. Also, Sarah Boone was a former slave who became one of the first black women to be granted a design patent. So she used it to improve the ironing board. Her design is still the one that we use today.
This goes on and on. So many African Americans are responsible for the things that we use every day, like the fire extinguisher, the automatic elevator doors, golf tees even. Time for a quick break. We'll meet you on the other side.
Yeah, I sat down with Vanessa White and we talked about everything from how she got here to upcoming launches here at NASA and the importance of exposing young children, especially those in underserved communities, to STEM training programs.
When we have issues in space, those issues are not looking at whether or not you're a woman or if you're a man.
Solving problems and sending astronauts into outer space.
Being director of NASA Johnson Space Center, it requires your constant attention to the details of the job.
That's a day in the life for Vanessa White, who was recently appointed director of Johnson Space Center here in Houston. She's the first black woman to ever hold this position, and she paid her dues for more than 30 years to get here.
From my very first job as a project engineer to being a manager of shuttle missions, many of those I was maybe the only female or the only African American that was in that particular position.
Johnson Space Center leads the world when it comes to humans exploring space. Astronauts train thoroughly on site leading up to their launches out of Florida. In the midst of it all, there's Weich, making sure everything goes according to plan.
Being ready for our upcoming missions, as well as the technologies that we're working on to advance us going to the moon and then on to Mars.
And while Weich might be the first black woman to hold her position, she's hopeful that she won't be the last.
It's very important that we have our children know that they can be and do whatever they want to be, right? Because in 2022, I would think that we would not have as many firsts as we're having today.
NASA has put a focus on making sure people of diverse backgrounds are represented, both behind the scenes and inside of those rocket ships.
It's important for all of us to be able to come to work each day and bring ourselves.
In 2020, Victor Glover Jr. became the first black astronaut to launch on a long-duration mission to the International Space Station.
Not even gravity contains humanity.
And then there's Jessica Watkins. In April of this year, she's set to become the first black woman to complete an extended mission on ISS. And Weich tells us NASA is also working with schools in underserved neighborhoods to help expose children and youth to science, technology, engineering, and math.
Helping those students do hands-on science projects, that access that we may not have. So there are programs that are available, summer camps, etc., that cost money that maybe our children can't afford, but if we can give them that same kind of experience, then that can get them exposed and get them connected.
And here's a fun fact. While Weich works daily to launch people off the planet,
I get great joy out of putting other people in space.
She personally has no desire to leave Earth. You don't want to go?
No.
Ever?
No.
And Weich is currently in the midst of working on several big projects. In the next few months, we'll see astronauts taking off on some major launches, and they're training right here at Johnson Space Center. For Fox 26 News, I'm Gabby Hart reporting.
Well, moving on now to art around the city that you can visit anytime that highlights Black history. Fox's Ruben Dominguez has this story.
Renowned Houston artist Reginald Adams is telling the story of Juneteenth through two important art installations, the first of which you can see right here at Emancipation Park. In January of 2020, Adams and his team installed 4 monuments honoring the founding fathers of this historic site, which was created so that the community could have a place to gather and celebrate Juneteenth.
So here at Emancipation Park, nestled at each intersection of the park, are sculptures that honor and feature the biographies of the 4 founders of Emancipation Park.
Each monument is unique and features intricate mosaic work. The artists painstakingly applied all of the material by hand, including a section added by a descendant of Jack Yates himself.
Emancipation Park is such an important part of the narrative of Black culture in Houston. And to be an artist, to speak to that narrative is critical because it also gives young aspiring artists and other children a chance to see themselves in a positive light. That's the importance of these kind of public art projects in telling the story of Black culture in Houston and in America.
Heading down south to Galveston Island, you will find another one of Adams's creations that depicts one of the most important events in the history of emancipation in Texas. On the corner of 22nd and Strand, you will find the Absolute Equality mural and its portrayal of how Juneteenth came to be.
It gives the history of the journey of freedom from Esteban or Esteban, who was first shipwrecked here in Galveston in 1528, through the Juneteenth events and even to the present. So in the mural, there's the image of Esteban, Harriet Tubman, Abraham Lincoln, and then the main focus of the mural is General Gordon Granger with the United States colored troops who were here with Granger in 1865, walking the streets of Galveston.
For visitors that want to delve deeper into the history and the events that led to the freeing of Black Americans on the island and the rest of the state, There is a free app called Uncover Everything that uses augmented reality to help you learn more.
So once individuals download the app, I usually turn it sideways so that it focuses in on the mural, and then it'll pick up the image and a video will start to teach you the history. It's not only Galveston history, this is Texas history, American history, and world history. And it's 365 days a year. We need to study this history and know these stories.
Just around the corner from the mural, there is a small gallery that is part of the NEA Cultural Center, filled with paintings and sculptures. It allows visitors to find out even more about the story of Juneteenth.
The Juneteenth mural really inspired what we're working on now in the background, and that's a nationwide Juneteenth mural campaign. We're taking the inspiration of absolute equality to 12 cities around the country, and I'm just excited to see where that takes us in telling the story about Juneteenth, Black history, and our role in America.
And for more Black History Month content, be sure to check out our website at fox26houston.com. Ruben Dominguez, Fox 26 News.
And don't forget, we also have an impressive museum community here. The Museum of Fine Arts, the Buffalo Soldiers Museum, and the Houston Museum of African American Culture all offer experiences that focus on Black culture.
Now, if you're looking for content you can watch at home, try Tubi. It's a free streaming service, and they have a catalog of TV and movies that highlight Black entertainers. Take a look.
Tubi is honoring Black History Month with a collection of films, series, and originals, including welcoming audiences to Howard High February 4th. The original musical, based on the TV miniseries, follows a group competing with a rival school to save their arts program. February 16th is the premiere of the 2-hour original documentary, Pass the Mic, celebrating the careers and inspiring influence of superstars Lil Nas X, Lizzo, and Kendrick Lamar.
I have to clear Mama's name.
Starting February 2nd, Tubi will be the only place to stream the entire first season of Fox's Our Kind of People for free. The soapy drama from executive producers Karen Gist and Lee Daniels is based on the book Our Kind of People Inside America's Black Upper Class. It's set in Oak Bluffs on Martha's Vineyard and follows a single mom seeking answers about her past, determined to reclaim her family's name.
You might tell me what a stranger's doing tanning in my boss's backyard.
Also find Tubi original mystery thrillers like Twisted House Sitter, about a woman who meets, then moves in and tries to take over an affluent entrepreneur's life.
What happened last night?
Girls Getaway Gone Wrong has a trio of friends waking up to find a woman fell to her death on their big night out with evidence pointing to them.
Hilarious.
And the holiday comedy Most Wanted Santa, about an FBI agent and detective searching for an art thief, and Santa is a top suspect. All of these originals are in addition to the more than 1,400 Black cinema titles available throughout the month, with award-winning stories, classics, and star-studded casts. In Hollywood, Ashley Dvorkin, Fox News.
And it is so great there to see full catalogs of content, really giving a lot of Black talent an opportunity to shine. Well, that will do it for us here tonight. We appreciate you spending some time with us.
And remember what this month is all about. No matter the color of your skin, let's celebrate one another, honor each other, and support each other. Happy Black History Month.